Hello, Cloud Dwellers, and welcome back to Blue Cloud University. Now, this week's video is an exploration of the kinds of questions that may pop up during a certification exam, and in particular, the Marketing Cloud Email Specialist exam. And what I want to be able to do is provide you with a deeper understanding when you approach questions like this as to why certain answers are absolutely not going to work and why the right answer is the right answer. Now, let's take a look at this week's question.
Benson's Widgets just acquired a large number of new contacts at a trade show. Now they want to add these new contacts so they can send them messages from Marketing Cloud. What is the best way to include all these new contacts to the all subscribers list? Now this question is asking a number of new things. For example, we need to understand what the all subscribers list is in order to be able to answer this question. And also just understanding the mechanics of how do we add data to our databases. Let's take a look at the first answer and see if it unveils anything new for us. The first answer says the admin should import the new subscribers into a sendable data extension. Marketing Cloud will automatically add each new subscriber on the all subscribers list at send time. Now again, a couple things coming up. For example, if we don't understand what the all subscribers list is and what it does, this question is going to be very hard for us to answer. And also this concept of a sendable data extension. Again, if we don't understand what a sendable data extension is and the uniqueness of it, this is going to be a challenge. So we're going to open up a little bit of a can of worms here. I want to give you a breakdown of kind of how we got here historically. Now, as you're already aware, the internet has not been around forever. As a matter of fact, in the late 90s, there was a huge period of growth where the number of people who were online went from 70 million users in 1997 to over 400 million in 1999. So in just 2 years, this huge growth. And this meant a lot of people started moving online. And the marketers started noticing that the folks were no longer sitting on their sofas watching their televisions or in their cars listening to their radios. They were starting to do this internet thing. Now, back in the day, marketers had their challenges, as they always have, and of course, being able to find a way to get the right message to the right people at a good cost was the biggest challenge. And for a lot of marketers, especially direct mail marketers, it was an expensive proposition with non-guaranteed returns. So the margins could be very slim because there was a lot of upfront expense. So if I wanted to send a message out the door, for example, I had to cover things like my manufacturing costs for my materials, like envelopes and printing. I had to cover postage costs. Of course, I might need to buy data. And so at the end of the day, sending a message out the door would cost me money before it even was received by the recipient. And so this was the first group that really started to notice how email had changed the world, because suddenly we don't have those manufacturing costs. We don't have the printing costs. There's no postage. And by the way, we can send things around the world as simply and as cheaply as we could send them down the street. So I have to pay for the cost of creation, maybe the cost of my data to pull together. But data was an interesting challenge back in the late 90s, because while we're starting to see all these people showing up online, how do we reach them? And there was no major directory of here's everybody who's online and their email address. So what started happening is some enterprising folks went out and they said, we're going to make a list of people who have email addresses by going out and we're going to look on the internet. We're going to go to all the different websites that we can find, and we're going to look for the @ symbol. So they created these little web crawlers, these bots, and they would send it down, and they would say, is there a website there? If there's a website, go and look at all the pages of the website and see if you can find the @ symbol. And if you find the @ symbol, that most likely is going to denote that this is an email address. Grab that email address and bring it back, and we're going to put it in our database. So suddenly there are bots crawling around, and any place anyone has left a publicly available email address is being scraped off and put into a database. So now these enterprising folks are then turning to these new marketers and saying, hey, you need to reach people? Look, we have millions and millions of email addresses that you can get your message in front of. Now, the challenge with this model is, who did these email addresses belong to? Who were these people? What did they need, etc.? And the answer was, we don't care. Look at all the email addresses we have. And so before too long, anybody who had an email that got copied and put into these databases, it was getting replicated, and email was starting to flow into these accounts. Right? But the result was a lot of stuff that was irrelevant and unnecessary, and frankly, some of it was very offensive. And so it started to become this arrival of what we called spam. And the challenge that we ran into, and this was a global challenge at the time, is that there was a loss of productivity because so many people were spending time trying to manage the amount of garbage that was going into their inbox every day. It was costing 3 hours a day of people actively getting rid of the bad mail so they could filter out and make sure that the mail they needed to check on was there. And it was estimated at the time that U.S. companies were losing billions and billions of dollars in lost productivity. All right, huge, huge numbers. And so at this point in the United States, the federal government said, well, you guys have to behave because this is not doing well for our economy and we can't have this happen. And this is in 2003, but they also had the foresight to say this is a brand new technology. And we don't want to come in and stifle the brand new technology. We want it to be able to grow. But what started to happen, of course, is they said, please be self-governing. And a lot of people stepped forward in the marketing world and said, let's be self-governing. Let's make sure we set up some guidelines and rules on how to use email. But it was very much the Wild West. And there were a lot of people who didn't want to play by the rules regardless. So what started to happen in late 2002 is the pornographers started sending out lots of spam to anybody who had an email address. And as you can imagine, it was not well received. And so as a result, in 2003, the United States government, along with governing bodies and advisors, got together and they released what they called the Can-Spam Compliance Act of 2003. By the way, Can-Spam is an acronym. It stands for Controlling the Assault of Non-Solicited Pornography and Marketing. Can-Spam. Now, the folks at Hormel, the folks who make potted meat, they were not happy. There were lots of lawsuits, which they finally gave up on at some point. But the truth of the matter is it set some guidelines for marketers in the United States. And the primary guidelines were simply, you no longer have the right to send email to anybody you want to send email to. If you send an email to somebody, a commercial email, it has to be because they gave you permission. And what does this permission look like? Well, you're going to have a list that's going to say, yes, I have your permission. And if they rescind that permission in the future, you have to take them off your list. So this was really where we went. You cannot send an email to somebody who has not given you permission. If they rescind that permission, you then have to remove that. And of course, there are things about relevancy and sending, non-aggressive and offensive messages to people. The challenge with any new law is enforcing that law. So the federal government then turned to the internet service providers, the ISPs, and they said, hey, you folks, you businesses need to be keeping an eye on spam coming through and don't allow it to happen. And at first the internet service providers like, wait a second, we're just conduit. We're just channels that data flows through. How can we be responsible for the content? And the federal government said, well, figure it out. Otherwise, we're going to charge you for each violation. And by the way, the number, $43,792 US in fines for every violation. Well, this got the ISP's attention, and so they started really cracking down and had to go in and say, all right, how do we identify what a spammer looks like? What is a spam message? And there's some interesting science in there. But as a result, the ISPs to today are continuously looking for spam messages. And so this means anything that might look like a spam message, even if it's not a spam message, may get filtered out. And so there are deliverability challenges that we run into. So we have to figure out, how do we make an email that's going to get past the filters that the ISPs are putting in there? Because when an ISP looks, or the automated systems look at an email, they're going to make a decision quickly. Is this a spam message? Throw it in the garbage pile. Or is this a good message? Let's send it through to the recipient. So some big challenges. And by the way, this is a huge problem. And looking at global email every single day, over 123 billion email deliverability attempts are made every single day. And of those, nearly 85% of them are garbage. They are spam. And so that leaves 23 billion emails a day that need to be delivered worldwide. So you can see why there's a need worldwide for this type of compliance and this type of guidelines. Now, why am I sharing all of this with you? What does this mean? Well, the truth of the matter is that Marketing Cloud is built around this idea of the Can-Spam compliance law. Because what it says is, okay, if someone has given us permission to send them an email, fantastic. But if somebody then takes that permission away, we have to know about it and we have to be able to react to it. So this brings us to understanding what the all subscribers list is and what it does. Now, when working in Marketing Cloud, if you go to Email Studio and you go to your subscribers tab, right here at the very top is where the all subscribers list information is being stored. Now, what does this list do? Well, this list is very, very fundamental. What this list allows us to see is the email address we're using to send to people, their subscriber key, which is a unique identifier, and their current status. This is the most important thing here. And what's going to happen is every time an email gets sent through Marketing Cloud, we're going to look this person up. We're going to use their subscriber key, which is that unique identifier, right? Not their email address, because they might be in there multiple times. But this is going to be the unique identifier for an individual subscriber. And we're going to say, what is that person's status? Now, in this column, everyone here currently is active, but you may have someone who is no longer active. They have unsubscribed and will show up here as unsubscribed. And so if I go to look at this person, for example, and say, hey, can I send you an email? And the answer is, I'm unsubscribed, then the answer is going to be no, and I'm going to move to the next record. So this is a very important thing to understand. Every single email that gets sent from Marketing Cloud, that person has to be looked up first to see what their current status is. Now, the importance here, of course, is this is an automated process in Marketing Cloud. And if I send you an email, let's say, and you go and click on, I want to unsubscribe from this mailing list, then you have the right to do that at the bottom of the email that you receive, or perhaps there's another way that you're unsubscribing. If I were to send you another email an hour later, your status will automatically have been changed here in the all subscribers list, and I'm not going to be able to do that. So this helps to make sure that the marketers remain compliant. They don't have to constantly manage if somebody is subscribed or not subscribed. The system will automatically do that for them. Now this brings us to understanding what a sendable data extension is. Now, the all subscribers list, once again, is going to contain information unique identifier, so we can look people up. It's going to have their email address, so we can send them email, and it's going to have their current status, which is going to determine whether or not we can send them an email based upon CAN-SPAM compliance law. Now, a sendable data extension is simply just a table of data, and we might have information like the recipient's name, their email address, their unique identifier, and some other data we may have on them. What this means for us is that if we want to be able to use this for the purposes of sending email, we have to have a way of looking that person up in the all subscribers list. So I have an identifier here, right? We're calling it ID, but the information in ID is the same information that's in subscriber key. And even though they have different names, it's the same content. And so I would create an interrelationship between this data extension and the all subscribers list. And I would say, hey, I need to use this value called ID, and I need to compare it against the value you have in the all subscribers list called subscriber key. And it's going to basically say, all right, I need to go look somebody up. So I have this guy here. I don't really care much about his name because this is how I identify him. Hey, I need to send an email to this person. Can I do it? And it's going to go to the all subscribers list and look them up and say, yep, that recipient is active. You can send something to them. And I'll go to the next record. Okay, I have another one here for you. Can you look this person up for me? Yep. That person's unsubscribed. You cannot send to that person. And we're going to continue down through the process of looking that person up. Now, this is going to be an important thing to understand as well. We have information down here. You can see we have Aleem, and Aleem has an identifier that is not currently in our all subscribers list. So what is going to happen if we try to look Aleem up using this value that's not in the all subscribers list? And the answer is that it's going to allow us to create a brand new record for Aleem, because what we're looking for are people who are unsubscribed. Now, Aleem's not even in the database over here. He's never received an email from us. So what's going to happen every time we send information out the door is it's going to look that person up. If the person's on the list, it's going to find their status and react accordingly. If the person is not on the list, it's going to say, oh, you haven't been here before, welcome in. And it's going to give them, bring over their ID, bring over their email address, and give them a new status of active. So now, every time we want to add people to our database, we simply do that, and when we send the email out to them, we look them up first. Not here, we're going to add you to our database, and now you are part of what we're doing. So getting back to our first answer, the admin should import the new subscribers into a sendable data extension. Marketing Cloud will automatically add each new subscriber on the all subscribers list at send time. Is a very viable answer. Now let's go on to answer number 2 and see what happens here. In this scenario, it says the admin needs to manually create a new record for each subscriber in order for them to be added to the all subscribers list. Now, when you're going through an exam and you find a question or an answer that sounds like it's making a lot more work for the marketers, it's generally not going to be true. And in this scenario, if the admin need to manually go in, write a huge number of new contacts at a trade show, it could be thousands and thousands of people. Do you want to go create a new record for each subscriber so they can be added to the all subscribers list? Yeah, I didn't think you did. So in this scenario, if we already have them in a database and we send them to the all subscribers and send an email out the door, then we don't have to worry about that. They get added automatically. So 2 is not going to be the answer we want to work with here. What about number 3? This says the admin needs to send an email to each new contact with a link that they can click on to be added to the all subscribers list. Again, this would be an extra step. And if you imagined you had to send a follow-up email to everybody you met at the trade show and say, hey, in order for us to send you email in the future, you have to click this link, you're only going to get a small percentage of the people that you met. So once again, not a good answer and a lot of extra work. So the answer in this scenario is going to be our first one. It's going to be this idea of being able to create a sendable data extension. And when that data extension gets used, it automatically checks people in the all subscribers list. And if they're not there, it will add them.